Herb Cohen. Today I want to talk about differentiating the diagnosis of people with psychosis who struggle, medication isn't working, they're having negative auditory hallucinations, they're having somatic feelings of being raped or being choked or stabbing pain places in their body. Um, there's a feeling that these things are real, that they're inside them, that they can't get out, they have no control over, and they don't respond to medications. Antipsychotic medications don't work. Um, they don't have any other disruption in their thought process. These people are usually very connected, very sensible, very intelligent, very grounded otherwise, but they all have trauma histories. This is the subject, the person of subject that we're talking about. And what I noticed in working in mental health programs was that 50% of the people coming in had trauma histories. And often these trauma histories were not discovered or connected to their symptoms. They were diagnosed by their behaviors, and sometimes their behaviors were triggered by the medications that they were prescribed. For example, people were put on an inpatient program because maybe they had emotional dysregulation from their traumas, and then were prescribed an antipsychotic medication like geodone, which would be a mistake to do, but then they would hallucinate from the geodone, and they would say, oh, look at that, they're hallucinating, they must be schizophrenic, and they'd come to us with a schizophrenic diagnosis when they didn't really have schizophrenia. So we did a differential diagnosis, and we saw that 50% of the people had either an additional diagnosis of post-traumatic stress disorder, or they were misdiagnosed. And in what we did was apply the appropriate treatment. When you apply appropriate treatment, like EMDR, for example, the symptoms the person was demonstrating resolved regardless of their diagnostic label. And sometimes those diagnostic labels were depression, because PTSD can present as depression. Um, People were diagnosed with bipolar disorder, borderline personality disorder, schizoaffective disorder. And some people actually did have some bipolar comorbidity, um, and even schizophrenic comorbidity. We saw comorbidity across the board with trauma, but sometimes the trauma stood alone and just resolved, and the diagnosis obviously was wrong because they didn't have any other symptoms and they need to be on medication. So trauma survivors um, have a vast range of symptoms and severity. Trauma is a range disorder, and it can be, simple single events, and it can be a lifetime. So there's a huge range of frequency and severity by which symptom groups are going to manifest. 30% of the people practice that I see in my practice now, my practice is almost all trauma, and so I see a lot of trauma survivors, and 30% present with significant special abilities like psychic abilities. They feel people, they're body empathic. They feel people when they go food shopping. They feel what someone else feels. They can read others. They can read me when I'm sitting there. They're reading me. They're, they can read people who have passed away. They can connect with people and receive messages from people who have passed away, like mediums. They have these abilities, and these abilities have come from being traumatized. Now, in mental health, we don't really look at we look at emotions, and we look at thoughts, and we look at the physical body, and medically we're trained to deal with this very set, finite systems that we work with. But our bodies are electric. We are 60% water. We have EEGs that measure electrical activity in our brain. We have EKGs that measure the electrical activity of our cardiovascular system. We know our nervous system is electrical. In fact, most body systems work on electric conductivity. And there's another energy system that is etherically based on our body. And in other words, what that means is that it's part of our body and it works in integration with our physical body, but it also can be separate. So this is something that we don't study when we study mental health or psychiatric care. And these are based on the Chinese medicine system, where acupuncturists recognize there are energy meridians that don't have a physical, we can't open someone up and see these energetic meridians in our body. We can't open someone up and see our heart chakra or see any of these chakras, these energy centers. Yet, if we work with these energy centers, we can get effect. We can see change. Acupuncturists wouldn't be in business if they weren't successful in what they did, if they didn't have an outcome. So we can see there are science to this energetic system. We may not have the tools by which to measure or see it. And sometimes when we can't see or measure something, we discount it. We say that it's not real. But that's kind of limiting, and that's where science may just need to catch up. So we have chakras, and we have an auric field, which is this boundary around us that we sense with. We sense everything with our chakras, which are connected to our auric field energetically. This is our energy body. And when you walk into a room and someone is angry, someone is rageful, all of a sudden you can feel the room shrink. And we have this sense that we can sense that person's anger. And we feel that. And we become vigilant to that person. Now, everyone experiences that. Everyone can walk in the room, and if someone is sad and crying and grieving, we can feel their grief. We have empathy. That ability to have that kind of sensing, that sense of empathy, or that just knowing that we've said something wrong by the expression on someone's face, and we can sense their energy shift, that the bottom just fell out, and and we're feeling that from that person. We're like going, oh no, what did I just say? Okay, can I take it back? And that feeling, that sensing, is through our auric field and our chakra system. And so we have this knowledge, this information coming into us through this aura and chakra system, this energetic system. It's energy based. When we are traumatized, we become hypervigilant. So as children, especially when we're helpless to adults who are abusing us, who perhaps are even our caretakers, it's even worse, we have to protect ourselves. And one way that people have protected themselves is to take that auric shield and expand it and make it as big as we possibly can. What that does is it enables me to sense someone coming who's endangering me before they come to me. I can sense someone coming when they're intending to come before they even start coming. If I have my auric field expanded wide enough and I have that supercharged sensory ability system that I've learned to put in place. So this is a way of protecting myself. The other thing that, so when we open up our chakras and we expand our auric field, we develop sensory abilities. We become hypersensory, okay? And this is that extrasensory ESP. This is how this happens, except these people aren't choosing this to happen. This isn't fun. This is survival. And the other thing that happens is that they may go out of body. And this is a way of dissociating. And we commonly categorize all dissociation as one thing. Whether someone's on the ceiling looking down at themselves or in the wall boards or the floor, that out-of-body experience is categorized in the same manner as people who have physical memory walled off. But they're two different kinds of dissociative memory. So the walled off physical memory is limited to physical memory system, and it physically is inaccessible. And we have to work really, really hard to break down those walls in order to get into those memories. They're very, very protected systems. And that also can result in fragmentation of the self. The energetic body, when the energetic body goes to the ceiling or into the wall, it is their chakra system that is leaving, their whole energy body that is leaving and going into the wall and watching their physical body, or waiting for the abuse to their physical body to stop, and then the energetic body rejoins the physical body. This is what's happening, and this is energetic memory. It forms a cell in the brain where energetic memory is formed and stored. And these cells of memory, they're like long chains of memory that are stored together, are very easy to access with EMDR. So it's very different than the other dissociative memory. So it's a whole different separate system. And science doesn't yet recognize that there are two different ways that people dissociate. But when you do treatment, you recognize that, my gosh, sometimes people's dissociative memories are easy to access, and some are really like in behind the Iron Curtain, and it's just really difficult to get to those memories. So this is the difference. They're very different. They feel very different. The idea of dissociating the worst memories still, the rules, all those rules still count. It's just that this was the system that person adopted. When someone goes out of body, they're experiencing a whole different experience of themselves as an energy body. So now they're in the energy body and they're in a different place in consciousness when they're out of body. So they're experiencing higher consciousness. And in this higher consciousness realm, they are in fear and they are vulnerable to things that can prey on their fear. So let's now take a break from what we know. So I know that most people are very comfortable being with what they know, and they know being in this 3D body, in this 3D world, and the science that we know. Here, we're now going into another place. We're going to go into consciousness, and consciousness has a frequency range, and when we go into a higher frequency, we can experience consciousness in a different way. And we can access different things in this consciousness. Now this, by some people, would label as psychic or paranormal experience. These are labels, these are derogatory labels because they are saying they're not normal or they're beyond normal. They're not beyond normal, they're not weird or fringe, they're just not common. And because it's not something that we may be experienced in or may be common to us, we see it as different, and so we're quick to put a label on it and say, well, that's out there. But you know, we have to understand that there are people in front of us who are suffering, and we need to get that bigotry out of the way. Because it's just like, just because someone's different doesn't mean that we need to label it in a derogatory way. This is a different experience of consciousness, and it's their experience of consciousness. And in a high, and we can all choose to experience consciousness. We can train to be in higher consciousness, and in higher consciousness we can connect to spirituality. We can connect to experiencing ascended masters and God and people that have passed on. We can experience guides that are working with us, that are spiritual beings, that are beautiful, loving beings that can help us grow spiritually. And these experiences, whether you want to believe them or not, are experiences that people connect to and can grow and benefit from. But in that world also are dark entities, and this is what's attacking these people. They prey on fear, and these beings uh, are accessible when I take a client into higher consciousness. They can see these beings, they can experience what's happening, and we can bring in protection to chase these beings away. We can establish a way of that person putting up a barrier to protect them from being attacked. And guess what? Their symptoms resolve. So here's where we can now check in and say, well, this is really weird, and this is fringe, and this is paranormal, whatever label we put on it. But the bottom line is, we just got rid of those symptoms that we call psychosis, that don't respond to antipsychotic medications. So we have to kind of get out of our comfort zone, accept that there are other possibilities here, and help the client get better. So, so here we can help the person get rid of these entities and protect themselves from these entities. But in order to really permanently help them, we have to treat their trauma. And don't forget, this is only happening in trauma survivors who probably have been misdiagnosed as being psychotic or mentally ill, when they may not be. They may also be comorbid to mental illness. They may actually have mental illness and have trauma and have these dark entities that are preying on fear or preying on their anger or their vulnerability. Well, if we treat their trauma and we take away that vulnerability, there's nothing for these dark entities to feed on anymore. So we're really giving them permanent protection by giving them the right treatment. But this is the bottom line here, is that we need to open up our understanding, get out of the way, get our ego states out of the way, see the person in front of us, and help them as best we can. And that might mean going out of our comfort zone and recognizing that what's happening may not be what we think it is. Of course, finding someone that can do this work for them might be difficult. I'm kind of unusual in that maybe I know a handful of therapists that play around with higher consciousness and helping their clients work with that in that way, because we want to go beyond the experience of healing. We want to get to a place where we can feel as amazing as we can, and why not? So that might be a challenge, and that's the drawback here, but making this video just to open ourselves up and understanding that there may be solutions for these folks who aren't responding to medications and have these very dark experiences. This is my YouTube channel. I'm at Herb Cohen Flow, and my website, if you're interested, is herbcohen.one. I'll connect with you again at the next video. Subscribe, comment, like my videos if you like them, and certainly pass this video on to people who need to know this information. Thank you, and I'll see you soon.